I've been chasing this dream for several years now, and sometimes I get lost in the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day activities. Jumping from one project to the next, I often forget to celebrate the small wins along the way. Well, today I want to break this cycle of self-destruction and show you the big boat as it stands right now. So let me take you through the various projects we're working on at the moment. I'm going to start with the new kitchen we are currently building. The idea was to build this compact piece of furniture so that it fits perfectly with the floor pattern. The frame was simply screwed together with the screw head sunken deep enough into the wood so that we can add 10mm dowels to cover them up. We are using a regular kitchen sink, which I think fits best on the left side, and we use a fresh water pump for the water supply. Altogether, everything is pretty standard. There will probably be 3 cupboards at the top and bottom, most likely with hinged doors. Here's our feeding station. So my wife plays these games with the dog, where he has to solve some kind of a puzzle every time he gets his food. Apparently it's good for his mental health, and that's why we always have to keep a clean floor. And of course, you may have noticed that we put rubber mats on our new floor to protect it from wear and tear. So yeah, we went through all this trouble to build this floor just to cover it up. And I have to tell you that it was my plan all along. Moving on, next is our sleeping area, and let me just briefly show you our bedside view. On this side we got our other boats. Here we are currently finishing my first boat, more on that in a future video. This is our little dog wall to keep the dog from running into the other room. Next we have our new lithium iron phosphate battery. This is made up of 16 individual cells, and I wanted it to take as little space as possible, so I built a long box where they fit in perfectly. Next I connected the cells so that I end up with a 24-volt battery bank. For this I first connect them in parallel and then I connect them in series. I'm using a dolly BMS, a fuse and a main switch among others. I installed some supporting steel beams so I can attach a wooden plate, where we can then mount the electrical components we need for this battery. Here I first have to drill through the wood. I'm using my magnetic core drill because it allows me to make very straight holes through the entire steel beam. I've recently started using a milling tool whenever I make nice wooden plates, especially for the interior of the boat. I'm using hard wax oil to protect the cut edges. I'm using carriage bolts to attach the plate to the wall. I added a piece of wood here to support the weight of the inverter charger and of course the bracket that came with the inverter. Now the plate is ready to go on the wall. For this electrical installation, it's crucial that everything is super robust and sturdy, and looking at it now, I feel confident that our setup meets this requirement. Now that the inverter is installed, our battery setup is almost complete. I'm using 2 MPPTs to charge the battery with solar power. And here are the AC wiring components. This battery is definitely a game changer. Thanks to its large capacity and the way lithium batteries work in general, we can not only weld with it quite effectively, but we can also run our fridge and AC for an entire night without using up all the stored energy. Boating is obviously a passion of mine, but it requires a deep understanding of science, technology and the climate. But because most people get this type of news from mainstream media that's riddled with sensational spins or gaps in coverage, it can be hard to get a balanced perspective that properly splits fact from opinion. That's why I am genuinely excited to talk about today's sponsor, Ground News. Their app and website was developed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give people an easy, data-driven way to read the news. By gathering related articles from around the world, readers can compare coverage and verify information. For example, new research reported the Atlantic Ocean's currents are slowing down. The AMOC plays a significant role in regulating the weather and can have widespread impacts on the global climate system if it changes in any way. Ground News found 45 sources covering this from across the political spectrum. They also calculated that most of these news outlets are considered highly credible, meaning their reporting tends to be more objective and reliable. And from here, I can compare coverage to see how these factors affect framing. Some outlets are sensationalizing this study, claiming an apocalypse could happen as soon as 2050, 2030, or even next year. But with a simple scroll, I have access to highly credible outlets reporting that we actually lack the data to tell when the AMOC's currents will change. If you want to dive even deeper on this, Ground News always provides the original research. As you can see, getting your news here gives you more insight than any single article ever could. So I highly recommend giving Ground News a try. Plus, they're independent and subscriber funded, so their only agenda is to provide high quality content. Go to ground.news/myfirstboat or scan my QR code to save 40% on the same Vantage plan I use to stay fully informed on science, technology and more. Next, here on our dance floor, we have our custom seating area/podium. For this, we build a wooden frame that holds the amplifier on one side. We then attached some film-faced plywood plates to the front. We added wooden strips between the lids to match the design pattern of our new kitchen and floor. We added a border on either side of the lids to make sure they are fully supported on all sides. They open with regular hinges and are held down by magnets. As I mentioned, it's also a podium for people to dance on top, and as you can see, it works pretty well for that purpose. Now let's head to the bow and I'll show you our brand new railing. To make it, we simply attached 4 steel pipes at equal distances on either side of the bow and stern. The pipes were cut to fit perfectly along the curved part of the hull. We used a canoe with a wet piece of hardly flammable cloth to weld the steel pipes onto the hull. The upper parts of the pipes were cut to accommodate the railing perfectly. The ends of the handrails were closed off. So now all we had to do was to weld the curved handrail onto the pipes. I'm very happy with how the railing turned out. As you can see, it's very stable and robust. In some areas, we even ground down the wells for smooth appearance. And of course, the whole thing was painted in our signature light gray color. Now let's head to the stern of the boat to check out the almost finished rear platform, which is basically the helm of this boat. Since the platform is only needed for driving, and we, quite frankly, don't drive that much, it was never a priority, which is why it's still not finished. Nevertheless, we've made quite a bit of progress. We took leftover sandwich plates to cover the entire platform at the top and rear. Next we covered the upper part with an EPDM rubber tarp. Beforehand, I welded in some short steel sections so I can easily and quickly add a railing later on. Then I covered it with wooden planks. Now I know this won't last very long, but for now it's the best, quick and affordable solution I could come up with. After covering the platform and screwing everything down, I put a coat of paint over it. Then we finished off the edge with these bent pieces of sheet steel. The upper part of the helm area isn't done either, as I just haven't had the time to finish it yet. So far, what I've done is replace the ignition locks that came with the motors with these waterproof buttons and switches. Now moving on to the roof, I still need to install some kind of ladder. Here we've already installed 10 solar panels. We simply glued them directly onto the roof plates with Sikaflex. I've assigned different panels to different battery banks, and I'm not gonna bore you with numbers and ratings of my electrical system. Just know that these panels, just like the new lithium battery, are more than enough to fuel our lives with an abundance of electricity. Next, let me take you to one of my favorite areas, the underdeck space. A lot of effort went into turning this into a usable area, mainly for storage. The biggest challenge was preventing everything from turning into an unretrievable pile. So far, I think I'm doing pretty well. I got one of those professional level label makers to help me keep track of all the different categories of things I might need in the future. I've tried to label as much as possible and make sure everything goes back to where I took it from. I find this really helps me with my ADHD. Next, let's move on to the long main room in the underdeck. Here we have the underdeck's massive battery bank. This helps to keep on the lights down here and of course powers the bilge pumps. It also serves as a backup battery bank in case I have issues with my lithium battery. The rest of this large room is mainly used for storing various materials, paints and other liquids, and any other random useful stuff. I find it quite therapeutic to organize all this stuff. It's actually fun to create different categories and sort out all these items. Ask me for a hose, a rope, or even a new bilge pump and I'll produce it within seconds. Next we have the rear compartment where our dead on arrival generator is located. There's even an entire undeveloped corner that I'm planning to convert into a usable space soon. And this is where our tour ends. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you in the next video.